Hi, I'm Leena Rao. We're here with this week's Ask a VC series. We have True Ventures partners Tony Conrad and Puneet Agarwal with us. Thank you for joining. I want to just,
awesome to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. I just want to go through a few things about True Ventures and what you guys are doing. You're early stage investors. You've invested in Fitbit, Automatic, the developer of WordPress, MakerBot, a number of others. You currently have $600 million under management. You recently raised some more money earlier this year, so lots of exciting things for you guys. One thing I want to start off with, which I think is really interesting, is that you have a lot of varied investments. I mean, you also just invested in a coffee shop, Blue Bottle Coffee, which, you know, for anyone who's watching from San Francisco or New York, you may know it's sort of this awesome coffee, and definitely something that is like, if you're a coffee nerd like I am, you know Blue Bottle. First of all, I want to hear, why did you invest in Blue Bottle?
Sure. I'll take that one,
okay,
since I was the catalyst here. So Blue Bottle is definitely atypical, and for those of you who are working in kind of the non-tech sector, you know, this is not a signal that we're going to start doing a lot of deals in consumer packaged goods and other things. But this one came to us, what we call as a special situation. It came to us through a very trusted entrepreneur friend who was co-leading with us the investment, Brian Meehan. Brian had done Fresh and Wild in the UK, which was bought by Whole Foods. And then he recently had founded Nude Skincare, which was, and he co-founded it with Ali Houston, who's Bono's wife. And so, you know, he's a guy who knows his way around, very accomplished entrepreneur. He sold Nude Skincare in 2010 to LVMH. So the combination of Brian along with James Freeman, the founder, who is amazing, I mean amazing, was enough to get our interest. And then when you look at the dynamics of that business and the dynamics of the brand, the ability that we think for the brand to cross over into other markets and to a fairly broad demographic group, it's an exciting investment for us. And so, you know, we put a very large check down, and we've joined the board. And
right, it was $20 million.
Yeah, $20 million.
And you were the lead, True was the lead investor.
Yeah. But it's very exciting. I mean, if you talk to James Freeman, honestly, I always say this, you know, because Evan Williams is part of our syndicate, and Matt Mullenweg and a bunch of other kind of founders of movements. I think James is definitely one of the founders of this third wave of coffee movement. So, but I always say to them that if I were to blindfold myself and just listen to you talk about why you started your company, what's important to you in managing that company, where's your vision for it, I would, you know, you'd say different things, but you'd be saying the same things, right? There's really very little difference between all of them.
Well, so I'm interested in that point because True Ventures has investments across the spectrum. I mean, I was looking at your portfolio earlier. You know, it's mobile, it's enterprise. Yeah. You do a lot of enterprise. It's hardware. It's you know, media. You know, when it comes to blogging platforms. How that seems to be a good thing, of course, but also a challenge. I mean, how do you know what's the right investment? Is it the entrepreneur, or is it the company or the idea?
Well, I think we've always, you know, and Tony was referring to this earlier, I mean, the biggest criteria for True has always been people. I mean, we always say, we kind of joke, what are the top 3 criteria? It's people, 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 and then we think about markets and all that stuff. We absolutely do, but in all those scenarios, you know, Tony was talking a little bit about founders of movements. You actually find founders of movements in all those different pockets, right? And, you know, for example, in the enterprise space, you know, 50% of our dollars go into the enterprise world. But, you know, a guy like Luke Knies, who's the CEO of Puppet Labs, I mean, he built Puppet, you know, in his basement, which is, you know, this now a huge phenomenon. They had, you know, 3,000 people at their conference recently. Everybody's using Puppet. You know, that's that kind of creation. That person is very similar to, in a lot of ways, the founder of Blue Bottle, right? Somebody who's creating a movement where people are attached to it. And I think it also ties back to all of our interests. There's 7 of us who invest, and we all have varied interests. We come from different backgrounds. We've, as a team, founded 14 or so companies ourselves. So tons of operating experience across a lot of different areas. So our interests tend to go in those directions.
We mentioned enterprise. We actually have a great question from Adam, one of our readers. Given the consumerization of the enterprise, are the signals investors look for in a great enterprise investment opportunity the same as that of a consumer investment opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say yes and no. I mean, there are certain aspects that are certainly true. So for an enterprise now, the selling model has totally changed. So you got to have a beautiful product. Design matters. All that stuff matters. So it's got to be easily consumable, usable by kind of an end user, similar to consumer, I would say. I think the bigger difference is probably that you start thinking about business model sooner rather than later. So there's got to be a buyer. There's got to be a vision or direction of who's going to buy it ultimately. You know, a lot of our startups today have high velocity, sort of low friction models like the consumer world. And I think that is a huge criteria for us when we look at an enterprise deal. If you come in and tell me that you're going to do a classic enterprise selling model, that's kind of a negative in a lot of ways.
So give me an example of that. I mean, is there a company that you could speak to that has that model that you guys pride yourself on?
Yeah, there's many. I mean, Puppet I mentioned is one, but Urban Airship is another. I mean, it's basically, when it started off, it was developers just grabbing the API and using it, and now it's gone from developers to actual marketers. And Urban Airship provides push notifications in a context-based environment for your phone. So all those notifications you're getting from ESPN or whatever it may be, usually they're powering it, and they're pushing 3 billion notifications a month. But it very much started with self-service, developer picks it up, and then we went to more inside-driven model, and then those deals start creeping up. So it starts with a few $100 a month, then gets to a few $1,000s a month, and it's just easily accessible and usable. I mean, the trend is so real that at True, we actually, for the first time, hired a full-time inside salesperson actually at True to touch our portfolio companies. A guy named Lars Nilsson. He's built 3 inside sales teams from the ground up.
Wow.
He's amazing.
And he's touched 45 companies
and
in
he
the portfolio.
helps your portfolio companies develop these sales.
Inside sales.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I want to.
But he also helps evaluate the teams. He evaluates where talent might be. He evaluates the model. Are they going about the processes in the correct way? So, he's highly scalable across the portfolio.
Right, so from enterprise to hardware to... Yeah.
Or even, something like, some of our consumer businesses where, there's the opportunity for them quarterly, as a good example. It has a great opportunity to have an inside sales force. So, Lars is the right guy for them to go talk to because they don't know how to do that in the beginning.
I want to talk a little bit about hardware because there's a lot of talk about this sort of renaissance of hardware startups. There's a lot more investment dollars going to hardware. And interestingly, True, although you guys don't focus completely on hardware, you've got a lot of investments in hardware. MakerBot,
Yeah.
Fitbit.
A lot, yeah.
Is that on purpose, A? And then B, do you agree that there is this renaissance in the hardware industry?
We definitely, so I think one of the things we're proud of, and there's a lot of different things that we're definitely super proud of at True. But one of the things that we're really proud of is very quietly, the portfolio of hardware companies that we've assembled without hanging a big sign up that said, hey, we're going to have a huge hardware focus. I think we're just meeting with great entrepreneurs and listening to the signals, and little by little we found ourselves making bets. Companies like MakerBot that you mentioned, but Fitbit is starting to become massive scale. We have Siftio. Mm-hmm. We just made an investment in Chris Anderson's company, 3D Robotics, which is drones, commercial drones. We have Little Bits. We have Valencell.
Sano
Intelligence.
The list goes on, yeah.
We have a lot of hardware companies. So we think this is a very real trend around the connected web, connected things, if you want. And so far, out of all those bets, those are all bets that are on track, right, or doing exceptionally well. Whereas, when we look across some of the other sectors, we have some struggling companies here and there. So, the hardware stuff is working out great for us. We're not afraid of it at all. Having said that, hardware is brutally difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different
brutally
world.
difficult.
Margins are completely different, and
yeah,
the margins are totally different, but all those deals, I think the majority of those deals all started with small dollars actually. I mean, that's a huge difference in the environment that you can do smaller runs. A lot of it is software based too, so they're not just a singular based sort of toy. They're actually complex. They grow. They have huge software components associated with it. So the game of investing in hardware has changed dramatically to allow firms like ourselves to really get deep into it. So we're we're deep in it, and I think we're going to keep going deeper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think our
So
initial
expect
bet,
to see some more
our initial bet in
investments.
Fitbit, MakerBot, almost all of these was under $1 million
Yeah.
And now
to get them going.
they've grown a lot,
Oh, yeah.
tremendously more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to take another question from our audience. A commenter, Neil, he asked, how do you view non-technical founders who may have technical team members, but the founder itself is non-technical? So how do you view that when you're evaluating a possible investment?
Well, I don't think. Well, the ideal founder scenario for us, I think, when we look across our portfolio, is at least two. We like to say one sometimes is not enough. Although we have plenty of great examples. WordPress, Automatic is Matt Mullenweg's a single founder, and so we're very happy with that, right? Sometimes 3 feels like maybe 1 too many, and 4 is like definitely, it feels too many.
Like
Having
a lot,
said that,
yeah.
we have examples in each one of those
Right.
where they're thriving, and it's been great. But we like teams where there's a balance, actually, a technical co-founder and a non-technical person who kind of bring different skill sets to the table and can help kind of build a company from the very beginning. And so we definitely look for that. We have invested in companies without a technical co-founder, but they typically have a tech team in place. That's super important, right? And we're living in a world now where even for us, where we're investing at the very earliest stages, we expect, a great founder and a great idea gets you so far, but we typically want to see product, right? Or product that's live in the marketplace. So, just by nature of where we're investing, most every team has a great technical team in place.
I'm going to do another question from our audience. When, it seems like the VC industry is going through a little bit of a disruptive time, internally. I'm curious, and Matt echoes this, is the VC industry going through some sort of disruptive experience right now? And if not, what will it take to disrupt the VC business? And how do you feel like it's changed over the past few years? Because you've been doing this for some time now. So not to date you or anything, but you have experience. So
Well, let's let young Bear
Old Bear, thank you, Yoda.
let him talk a little bit.
No, I do think it's going through definitely a change. I mean, I think when True was founded back in '06, we recognized that there was sort of a disruption in the market, that there needed to be these smaller check sizes of sort of $250K to sort of $2.5 million, where a firm needed to play and bring all its resources and be able to stay with a company throughout its life. And the change that I think is going on right now is that you see a lot of firms getting bigger in size. So the sort of smaller, I say medium-sized checks, that $3 to $5 million check is the sort of Series A crunch that people have talked about, I think is very real. And then you have a bunch of stuff on the seed side, which is, creating a great funnel, but, where does it go after that? And so I think there's a huge opportunity, actually, if you think about it. There's this hole. We filled a hole sort of in the $250K to sort of $2.5 million range. But there's another hole, I think, right after that also needs to be filled, where I don't know that a lot of people are stepping up to fund what I would call almost these tweener deals. So if you kind of think of
what's a tweener deal?
well, I would say, so if you look at I would say the majority of deals are actually like that. So if you kind of think of a bell curve, the obvious great ones get funded right at the top, and then the ones that don't make sense, fall off. There's a bunch in the middle that, it takes time. It's a lot of ups and downs before a company makes it, and that's sort of what I mean by a tweener deal, where you don't have all the obvious information. It doesn't have every customer or revenue point that's happening. Right?
We had, concrete example. We had this with the Sicily, with Alex
That's right,
Barr
that's
and
right.
Gary Bennett and
Which
their
was
gang. By the way, a
acquired-
4-founder team,
which
so
was
that
acquired
worked,
by
right?
Salesforce,
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They
Great
went out.
outcome.
I remember when they went out to raise their I don't know if it was the A or B or whatever,
Yeah.
but their first kind of bigger round after the $1 million seed that we had done. They really had a hard time getting that round raised, and so we just leaned in because we could see the metrics of the business, and we saw the quality of the founders and the team that they had in place. So we had a viewpoint into the company that was advantageous, and we leaned in really hard. And sure enough, they were sold to Salesforce for a very significant number about a year after that. So I think, but But the Sand Hill Road wasn't going to fund that company at that time.
Why?
Right? Because it was, I think what Puneet's saying, there wasn't enough traction, and it wasn't clear that it was a winner yet, right? It was on a trajectory to winning. And I think that Sand Hill Road, in a lot of a lot of the behavior that we've seen is that people are waiting for things to really definitively, I have won. And then I think the attitude is, well, I'll be one of those 4 or 5 firms, and I'll increase my chances of just trying to win that deal, right? Mm-hmm. And if I lose that deal, that's fine. But there's going to be a handful of these deals, and I need to win one or several of them. And I think that attitude has definitely played itself out.
And when you have a larger
year.
fund size, you sort of say, okay, I'll pay up for it
Right.
later. Why
Right.
should I make a bet early? Right.
Yeah.
So are you seeing yourself do more of those assistly type of deals where you have, you've been an earlier investor in the company and they can't raise Series A or Series B, and then you guys kind of step in a little bit?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely, I think our history suggests that we do that very proactively, right? Mm-hmm. Where, let's not pound our head against the brick wall here. Let's keep building our business, and here's another check to kind of go. But I will tell you philosophically, we love to have another partner at the table. We really do, in these companies, because it diversifies the risk to a certain degree, for sure. But we also think just having different skill sets and different kind of viewpoints. We're so early. Our whole DNA is about early, mm-hmm. right? And how to scale. And we've done that as founders, first and foremost. We've built companies from the ground up, and then we've scaled with them to a larger thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas I think a lot of investors are trying to come in and plug in from an operational mode. And I will tell you, having been a founder and having a great seasoned venture capitalist, like a Doug McKenzie from Radar, formerly of Kleiner, to be able to plug in and help me at certain inflection points in my business, very different probably skill set than maybe what I might bring, to a lot of the companies we're investing in. So.
Yeah, so I want to talk just a little bit about that before we end, because we don't have much time left. But right now, True has 7 full-time partners, but 3 run other companies, including yourself.
Moi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what is sort of the dynamic then? Do you just not sleep? Is Puneet, not sleeping as well because he's making up for some of the stuff that you're...
I actually get Puneet to do all the real work.
Yeah, exactly.
I just bat my eyes and make it happen. No, I think I think we kind of backed into this. I wish we could say, boy, this was part of our strategy from day one. I think when the fund was being formed by John and Phil, and they were talking with John Burke and Tony Schneider and myself about joining. Tony Schneider and I had the inconvenient truth of Tony was running WordPress, and I had co-founded Sphere with him, and I kind of thought maybe for me I might kickstart it and let it happen and then find somebody else to come be that person, but that's not really the way it works when you're a founder.
Right. Of course,
I just never let it go. And what I think happened for us and Tony and for the firm is that we just developed a lot of confidence and comfort around the fact that it's atypical, but for whatever reason, it's working, right? We were able to scale our businesses. And look at WordPress. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really
It's one of the largest footprint companies on the web, period, right? And Tony is also a partner in the fund and co-founded Sphere with me. So, I think we just became comfortable with that. Secondly, I think for us, from a DNA standpoint, we doubled down on that when Malik also joined us, right? Who runs GigOhm or founded GigOhm. Because we saw that the conversations I think we're having around the table sometimes get grounded in a way that's fundamental and core. And I think if one thing, we have a great reputation in the community with founders, right, of being founder-centric. Everybody wants to say that, but what's that really mean? And I just think that we have people that are engaged in that environment actively, and therefore when we talk around the table, it adds something to the formula.
Right, well, because being a founder now is very different from 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Yeah. And the metrics are different, the fundraising is different.
I would say it's a real competitive
way you scale a
advantage
business.
For us, having these guys in the room, because you're constantly thinking, you're empathizing with the founder at all times. That, obviously from a deal flow standpoint, it makes a huge difference. It just takes a very unique individual to be able to handle both. And fortunately for us, Tony and Om kind of have that that sensibility to do it.
Greylock's another firm that does this. You
Yeah.
know, Anil runs was it
Workday,
Workday, and then you know there's Reid
yeah.
Hoffman, and they've always had that as well. They've had in the last 5 years that they've had a very similar kind of
Right.
DNA around this. And you know, you see Chris Dixon going to Andreessen Horowitz, and so I think this is
There's
going to
a
become more
movement, yeah,
subtle. But I think
Sure.
it's
Founders and VCs.
yeah, it's a little crazy at
Yeah.
times, for sure. You know, it gets a little out of hand.
You must have a very patient family.
Um,
Well, if you're,
Perhaps
you know,
I'm
working-
patient with my
oh,
family.
that could be it too. Well, I'm really, really excited that you guys joined us here, and I think our readers are really going to enjoy all of your insights, especially that on, you know, how to be a founder and a VC, and also coffee as well. So thank you so much, and tune in
Awesome.
next week.
Thank you.